The movie starts with a doctor named Philip Clark, who is a psychiatrist and lives a peaceful life with his wife Grace and daughter Lucy, while grieving the death of his son in a car accident 3 years ago. Among Philip's clients is a girl named Daphne who has dealt with depression and an abusive boyfriend, who she was able to leave with the support of Philip's therapy. In a session, she discusses her brother, who she describes as charming and intuitive, and confides in him about her regrets for negative behavior towards him. The apparently recovered Daphne is writing a book about her illness, which caused several suicide attempts and a stay at a psychiatric facility for over a year. Philip receives a call from Daphne, who tells him that her best friend Joan was killed in a hit-and-run accident. Later, Daphne is found dead outside her house. Philip comforts her brother, James Flagg, who arrives at the scene extremely distraught. The next evening, James drops by Philip's house to drop off a book Daphne had borrowed, and Philip's sympathetic wife Grace invites him to stay for dinner. Philip learns that James had written several books and is interested in buying one called Shadow Cast, which will take 2 weeks to arrive. Dr. Vanessa Fanning confronts Philip for his unconventional methods that led to Daphne's death, including confiding things in her he had not shared with his family. Grace secretly meets James to discuss selling his sister's house. They are clearly attracted to each other, and Grace confides in James that despite his profession, Philip has been unable to address the pain of losing their son, and their marriage is distant. Philip seems to recognize an inappropriate connection between them, and asks James to stay away from his family. Grace goes to see James again anyway, and despite her attempts to break off their connection, they have sex. James then files a formal complaint to the Washington Board of Psychiatry against Philip, and he is suspended from his practice until his client is fully investigated. James also befriends Lucy, who has a history of discipline problems stemming from her grief over losing her brother, and her emotional distance from her father and stepmother. James is charming and supportive to Lucy, and they form a romantic connection. She expresses a desire to run away, and he tells her to pack her bags so they can do so together, but he then ignores her phone calls and texts. Lucy is heartbroken and distraught as a result. While on the road, James knocks Grace unconscious and attempts to stage an accident by deliberately driving towards the passing truck. Having realized something amiss, while on the phone with Grace earlier, Philip catches them in time and saves her. At home, Grace and Philip tell Lucy that James is a sick and dangerous man, but Lucy does not believe them. Philip receives a call from Dr. Toth, who tells Philip that James admitted himself to the psychiatry facility due to auditory hallucinations, and he wants Philip to talk with James. At the hospital, Philip confronts James, who admits that he read Daphne's book covering about her session experiences with Philip, as well as Philip's family background. As he is escorted back into his cell, James maniacally tells Philip that he still smells Grace. Philip finally receives the book, where he finds the real James Flagg on the back cover. Philip realizes that James Flagg's real name is Eric Dalton, and Daphne was in fact his girlfriend. He is not a writer but rather a psychotic person, and he is the one who staged Joan's death to make Daphne distraught in order to take him back. When Daphne refuses, Dalton murders Daphne, staging it to make it look like a suicide. Philip calls Toth about Dalton's true nature, and orders him to lock him down, but it is too late. Dalton has already escaped. Realizing that Dalton is going after Lucy, Philip and Grace race back to their house, where James arrives first before them and attacks Lucy. Philip and Grace arrive and, after the struggle with Dalton, Grace kills him. The three embrace as the police sirens approach. And at this point, the movie comes to an end. Thanks for watching.